We are taught to see ancient Greece as the cradle of reason, a world of white marble, democratic ideals, and philosophers seeking truth. This is the story they built for themselves, the one carved into temple pediments and written in triumphant histories. But there is another Greece, one they tried to bury, a Greece of shadowed initiation chambers, of passwords whispered in the dead of night, and of rituals so terrifying that to speak of them meant a sentence of death. This is not the Greece of sunlight and symposiums. This is the Greece of the underground, and for those who dared to enter its secrets, the price of enlightenment could be madness. Or worse, the image of the logical Greek is a powerful myth, but their world was saturated with the supernatural. Oracles decided matters of state. Curses were etched onto lead tablets and buried in graves to cripple enemies. And for the deepest truths, you didn't go to a public temple. You were initiated. The most famous were the Eleusinian Mysteries. Promising liberation from the fear of death, they ran for nearly 2,000 years. Everyone from slaves to emperors was initiated. And yet we have no clear record of what happened inside the Telesterion, the great hall of initiation. The secret was kept completely. Historians like Plutarch said the experience was so profound that it left initiates weeping with awe. But what could cause such a reaction? The public records are silent. But archaeology and whispers of punishment give us the first clues. This secrecy wasn't a suggestion. It was a meticulously enforced legal and religious system. An inscription found at Eleusis reads, "It is not lawful for the uninitiated to enter the inner sanctuary." The penalty is death. This was literal. The Athenian statesman Alcibiades was accused of parodying the mysteries and was sentenced to death in absentia. His property was confiscated. His name cursed. His crime wasn't mockery, it was revelation. He threatened to expose the machinery of the state's power. The rituals were protected by a class of elite families, the Eumolpidae and Kerykes, who acted as gatekeepers. Initiation was a multi-year process of purification, instruction, and finally the central experience inside the hall. Candidates were led in a blindfold. They drank a special barley brew called the Kykeon, and then the doors were sealed. What happened next was the heart of the mystery. For centuries we could only guess. But modern science has begun to force the ancient world to give up its secrets. The prevailing theory, championed by experts like Karl Ruck, is that the Kykeon was a potent psychoactive brew. Ergot, a fungus that grows on barley, contains precursors to LSD. When carefully prepared, it could induce powerful, life-altering visions. The initiates didn't just hear a story about the afterlife, they were violently, visually transported to it. This wasn't spiritual entertainment. It was a state-sanctioned, ritualized, psychedelic experience. The priests of Eleusis weren't just holy men. They were master chemists and psychologists, guiding citizens through a controlled trauma that promised to erase their deepest fear. The power they held was absolute. Control the portal to the afterlife and you control the living. But Eleusis was just the approved state-sponsored secret. Beyond its walls lay far darker and more dangerous paths. If Eleusis was the mainstream, Orphism was the underground. Based on the myths of Orpheus, who journeyed to the underworld to retrieve his wife, the Orphics believed in a complex cycle of reincarnation. Their goal was to break free. Their rituals were darker, more ascetic. Excavations of Orphic burials reveal a chilling practice. Gold tablets placed on the lips of the dead and inscribed with instructions for the afterlife. One from Thurii reads, "You will find a spring on the left of the halls of Hades, and beside it a white cypress tree. Do not even approach this spring. You will find another cold water flowing from the lake of memory. Say, I am a child of earth and starry heaven. I am parched with thirst and perishing. Give me quickly cold water flowing from the lake of memory." This was a cheat sheet for the soul, but it came at a cost. Orphics practiced strict vegetarianism and renunciation, believing the body was a prison. Soma sema, the body is a tomb. Their rituals involved the symbolic, and some argue literal, dismemberment sparagmos of an animal, reenacting the death of the god Dionysus. It was a cult of purity achieved through imagined violence and strict bodily control, a direct challenge to the civic religion of Athens. And then there was Dionysus, the god of ecstasy, wine, and madness. His public festivals involved theater and wine, but his private rites conducted in the remote mountains were exercises in controlled chaos. The Roman historian Livy, describing the Bacchanalia, the Roman version of Dionysian rites, reported a conspiracy so vile that the Senate moved to crush it in 186 BCE. He speaks of initiations filled with debauchery, false prophecies, and the mingling of free men and women. He claims the ritual shrieks drowned out the sound of the crimes being committed within. While likely exaggerated for propaganda, it points to a deep Roman fear of these secret Greek societies. The dark heart of the Dionysian ritual was sparagmos and omophagia, the tearing apart and raw consumption of a living animal. Followers known as maenads were said to be possessed by the god spirit, enthusiasmos, granting them superhuman strength to perform this act. A red figure vase in the British Museum depicts this horrifying scene. Maenads, in a frenzied trance, tearing a fawn to pieces. This was the Greeks' greatest fear and deepest desire, the complete dissolution of the self, of reason, of civilization itself. For one night, through ritualized violence and intoxication, they could become the monster in the myth, and then return to their lives as farmers, mothers, and senators. The psychological whiplash must have been immense. Not all secrets were spiritual. In the gritty world of Athenian politics, secret societies called Hetairiai operated. These were clubs of elite young men, bound by oath to advance each other's careers and destroy their enemies. They were the dark underbelly of democracy. Their tools were conspiracy, character assassination, and violence. The most infamous act was the mutilation of the Hermai, the stone statues that stood guard throughout the city. On the eve of the disastrous Sicilian expedition in 415 BCE, someone systematically defaced them. The city was thrown into a panic. It was seen as a terrible omen and a direct attack on the state itself. The blame fell on the Hetairiai. Alcibiades and his companions were accused. It was a power play, a use of religious terror for political ends. It showed that the rituals of secrecy weren't confined to the spiritual realm. They were a weapon, sharpened in the back rooms of power and used to stab the heart of the state. The legacy of these secret societies is not found in grand monuments, but in whispers. When Christianity rose, it didn't just conquer the public temples. It systematically dismantled the mystery cults. The sanctuary at Eleusis was razed by the Visigoths and later sealed by Christian emperors. The secrets held for 2 millennia were lost to violence, but their ghost remains. In our own world, the allure of the secret society, the initiatory experience and the transformative ritual persists. We still seek to look behind the veil, to know what others cannot. The story of ancient Greece is not just a story of philosophy and art. It is also a story of what happens in the dark. It is a warning that enlightenment often has a shadow, and that the search for ultimate truth can lead to places from which there is no return. If this glimpse into the forbidden world of ancient secrets has unsettled you, remember this is only a fragment of the history that has been abandoned, deliberately hidden, or simply forgotten by time. What other lies are buried beneath the marble and the myth? The answers are still being uncovered. For more documented accounts of the brutal, unspoken past, subscribe to Abandoned Historians. It's the best way to ensure these stories are not lost again, and let us know in the comments, which secret society would you have dared to join?